It's Thursday, April 18th, and welcome to the New York Amsterdam News Podcast. I'm Cyril Josh Barker, coming to you from the offices of the New York Amsterdam News. On today's podcast, my guest is Alexander McNab, the Columbia University student who alleges he was racially profiled by campus security officers at Barnard College last week. He's with us today to discuss the situation, but first, I've got your AM News headlines. On page 1, we have Chanel Lewis sentencing postponed by Stefan Johnson and AM News editor Nyaba Arinde. Highlighting this week's sentencing for the convicted murderer, the sentencing was postponed due to allegations of potential juror misconduct. His family maintains his innocence. Funeral services for late educator and activist Stan Kennard were held in Brooklyn this week. Best remembered for running the Carter G. Woodson program at Boys and Girls High School in Brooklyn, Kennard died on April 6th after a long battle with cancer. Life coach Ayanla Van Zandt was among the speakers at the funeral. And on page 5, the first Black Miss America, Vanessa Williams, sits down for an interview with the Amsterdam News. The actress and singer discussed her upcoming benefit concert at the Schomburg Center in Harlem to raise funds to support students in the visual and performing arts at her alma mater, Syracuse University. You can find her story on AmsterdamNews.com, but you can also find it on our brand new profile website, The Black New Yorkers. And she's actually our first celebrity interview that we've had on the new website. We're so excited about that. So you can see that on our new website, theblacknewyorkers.com, and you can also read her story and other stories on our website, AmsterdamNews.com. So you can check those out. Well, my guest today is Columbia University student Alexander McNab, who made headlines after a video of him being pinned down and questioned by campus security went viral. He's with me today to discuss what happened and some new developments. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Is it Alex or Alexander? Which one do you want?
Some people don't call me either of those two things, but most people call me Alex.
All right, cool. Well, tell us what happened. A lot of us saw the video. I know for me, I saw it on Facebook. My cousin sent it to me, and that's how I was able to. I'll just tell you, I saw the video of you in the situation. I was coming back from Boston on the bus, and my cousin put it on my wall on Facebook, and that's how I saw you. That's how I first was introduced to this, and I was just appalled. Take us through what happened that day with what happened to you.
Right, so to put it very simply, I was walking from Columbia's campus where I had just finished a dance practice that ends at 11 p.m. on last Thursday, and I was walking over to the Barnard College campus across the street because I had seen that there had been an event and there was some extra food left over. Mm-hmm. Since I'd been dancing for 2 hours, I was obviously interested in seeing if there was any food still there.
Right.
And so not long after I passed through the front gate of Barnard College, I hear a voice and it says, "Hello, sir. Hello, sir." Like that, kind of calling out to me. And given past experiences that I've had in other circumstances, at Barnard and at Columbia, wherein public safety officers have asked me to show my student identification card, I did not turn around when I heard that person selling hello sir, but in spite of that, I was pretty sure that it was a public safety officer trying to ask me to show my ID.
Okay.
And I decided that this time I wasn't going to show him my ID. And the reason is that I wanted to communicate to the people in the building that I was going to, which I continued walking towards even after I was being called. I wanted to communicate to them that this type of random stopping of certain types of students, or certain types of people rather, at our school is something that goes on, because I think there's a lot of people who are unaware that this is a reality that many of us have and have had, even before I came to this school, live with.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So tell me, the video went viral. First of all, did you know the person who shot the video? You went in there. Did you know that? You know them now, obviously, because of what's happened. But did you know the person who videotaped you?
I didn't know anybody involved.
Okay.
I didn't know any of the witnesses. I didn't know the videographers, the people behind the counter in the cafe. I didn't know the public safety officers. I didn't know anyone.
Okay. And then also, you said that this has happened to you before. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I just want to let everybody know, Alex was here actually earlier this week for a larger story that we did write in the New York Amsterdam News. You can find that on page 3 in the paper, and it's actually on the homepage of our website. I believe he's the second story down on the scoreboard on the main board on the website, so you can read a little more about his interview with us earlier this week in the paper, where we go into a little more detail. But we're going to be going through some detail here as well. you said that this had happened before. Can you tell us about that? Because when you were here before, you talked about 2 instances where you were stopped, and can you talk a little bit about that?
So the similarity between what happened last Thursday and the 2 other times that I was stopped, the similarities actually, there aren't that many. Okay. They're simply that public safety came up to me and asked me to show my ID to prove that I was a student.
Right.
Everything else is a difference. So whereas last week it was me walking through the gate and then being asked to show my ID, the very first time it happened, it was me exiting a building on campus that I had already been in for 2 hours and being asked to show my ID. The second time it happened to me at Barnard, it was me walking from one part of that building, the same one that I had exited from during the first time, to another part of that building. Mm-hmm. And while within the building, which I'd already been in for an hour, being asked to show my ID. So again, the similarities are just being stopped and being asked. But the situation in which that stopping and asking was happening were different every single time. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we talked about before when you were here earlier this week is just a little bit about, you know, you're one of many in this country who have gone through this. We've seen, especially in 2018 and even now, all these instances of people living while black or living while people of color, whatever you want to call it. This essentially happened to you. What I want to talk about is the reaction from the school. I know that there was a listening session that happened that we actually mentioned in the story, but tell us a little bit about the aftermath, how the school brought it to attention. And in fact, there's an interesting fact that, you know, Barnard College, Columbia University, even though they're in the same space, they kind of operate a little differently. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So the relationship between Barnard and Columbia is very confusing, and I'm not the one to explain it. What I can say, though, is that basically the way it works is that within Columbia University, there are 4 undergraduate colleges, one of which is Barnard. Mm-hmm. On Friday, the day after I'd been assaulted by these officers, the 3 undergraduate colleges at Columbia that are not Barnard released a joint statement in which they basically denounced what happened and labeled it as using terms of racism and police violence and anti-blackness. Right. At that same time, Barnard College released its own statement from the president, Sion Bylock, in which she refused to use any of that sort of language. And in addition to refusing to use that language, she was very, very, very vague about what had actually happened, which actually caused a lot of Barnard students who hadn't yet seen the video to become very afraid. Right. Because they didn't know what was going on. It was described as an unfortunate incident, but a lot of people didn't know what that meant.
Mm. And so also so they kind of refused to use the term racial incident is what you're saying, is that was a factor here, that they didn't do that.
Not only did they refuse to use the terminology of race, they refused to use the terminology of assault, and they also refused just to say what happened. Normally, the protocol for when something occurs on campus or off campus, but in the vicinity of campus, is that a detailed but short message is sent out to let the students know what went down. Mm-hmm. This didn't let the students know anything about what went down. We had no idea who was doing what with whom, where, when, none of that. Mm-hmm. And that was very frightening to people. Mm-hmm.
And so also you, the officers or the security, public safety, whatever you want to call them, because you made a very interesting point when we interviewed you earlier this week. These are civilians who, also I wanted to know, did you get injured at all? Did you receive any injuries?
So I was never put in a position of pain. However, I was put in a position wherein which I would not have been able to move had I tried.
I see. Okay. And these security officers were put on administrative leave, and you have a very interesting term that you've been using to describe what's going on with that. What is that term? What do you call it?
Right. So it's not just any administrative leave. It's administrative leave with pay, which is what I call paid vacation. Because basically they're not working and they're still getting paid for it. So there's, in my mind, not too much of a difference, especially given the fact that although I do love speaking about this with the media because I do think it's an important part of bringing attention and creating change, it's something that is a big pressure on my time, and that has not affected the school deadlines that I still have to meet, and it has not affected the outside of school work schedule that I have to keep in order to make money, right? So I have the same load that I normally have with schoolwork and outside of schoolwork, in addition to this extra load that's been brought on to me by this incident that I never wanted to have happen, right? Whereas the people who are responsible for pushing me against the table and basically taking the actions that made this video go viral, don't have to work, and are still getting paid.
Yeah. So in the end, basically, you're the one who it happened to, and you're still having to live your life on top of all this other stuff.
You know, at the listening session, a student made a very good point to the administration. That student said that she feels that most often, whether it's about this issue or about some other issue that we have to deal with as students on campus, it's us, the students, who have to take on the majority of the labor for pointing out what the problems are and then for coming up with solutions for those problems, which to her, she said, seems unfair because that labor is not compensated. Whereas the people who are paid to recognize and solve these problems seem, in her eyes, to be the ones who less often take on that burden.
And tell us, what is the school telling you now? It's been almost a week now because this happened last Thursday. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's been a week. You've made your media rounds, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But tell us about what the school is telling you now, because the investigation's been going on for about a week now, I guess. What are they telling you?
So the investigation is still very much a nascent stage. I was only reached out to by the investigator on, I want to say Tuesday evening.
Okay.
I believe that's correct. It was
right.
It was earlier in the week, right? And I haven't yet met with the investigator because I would like to have some legal representation before I go in.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what other work the investigator has been doing, but certainly for an investigation that very deeply involves me, the fact that I haven't met with the investigator yet means that it isn't far progressed. In spite of that, the language that the Barnard administration has used to describe what happened took a complete 180 on Sunday night in a statement that they released, where they finally started using these terms of race and this goes against our values, all that sort of stuff that people have been asking for since Friday and that the other undergraduate colleges had been using since Friday. They finally started to use that language, which actually is a shift that doesn't really make any sense. Because on Friday, when students at a listening session for over an hour kept asking them, why do you not use this language of race and blackness and all this other stuff, they said, well, we would like to wait until an investigation finishes before we make any determination about whether it was race-related, whether it was actually an assault or not. However, on Sunday night, when the investigator hasn't even contacted me yet, already you see them changing this language, which to me is an indication of the fact that this thing about the investigation finishing was really an excuse to cover up for the fact that they were using vague language to protect themselves, right?
Right.
Then realizing that that vague language was actually more harmful than helpful to them, they switched their tactics.
And I want to talk a little bit about your race. When we asked you during the interview this week, you had a very interesting answer about because you're a mixed race, and I think people need to know because they're watching the video and they don't know. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you consider yourself when it comes to race, because you had a very interesting answer when we talked earlier this week.
So I am culturally black and I'm biologically mixed. However, I will say that if we're talking about racial profiling, I don't think that's really a relevant fact to what happened in that video. And the reason I say that is because although I am mixed race, I'm anything but white passing. And to think that the white gaze only looks down upon black people is to not understand how race works in this country. So those 6 officers could have each had a different idea of what my race was. But I'll tell you 2 things. 1, none of them thought that I was white. That's for sure. And 2, all of them thought that I was a threat. So it could have been the black thug. It could have been the Arab terrorist. It could have been Latino drug dealer. It doesn't really matter. The point is that I was seen as a threat because I was brown. Now, what type of brown I am to them or what type of black I am to them doesn't really make much of a difference, because through the white gaze, we were all looked down upon, right? And even though not all of the officers were white, that doesn't mean that they were not looking upon me with a very white gaze.
And I don't know if you want to get into it or not, but I'll ask, where are you with legal representation? Are you deciding to take legal action? What's going on with that? Have you decided to sue? Have you filed? What's going on with that? Because a lot of people are hearing this and they're reading this story, and the one question that they're asking is this guy going to sue, or should he should sue? And so where are you with that?
So I haven't yet decided whether or not I will do that. And I'm holding off on that decision because I do think that speaking to the press is an important part of making sure that positive change comes out of what happened to me.
Okay.
And I worry that the moment I get a lawyer, they're going to say, stop speaking to the press.
Okay.
However, I am seeking legal representation, at least to accompany me to the interview that I have with this investigator.
Okay. And I just want to talk a little bit about the video went viral. I think you told us, and I saw even on social media that on Twitter, on one account, I think it was seen 1 million times. When I first got it, I think the person that's, the account that it was on, it had been seen at least 105,000 times. You have been thrust in the spotlight. Whenever you put your name in on Google, whenever people hear your name, they're going to see you. How have you been taking the attention? You've been doing quite a few interviews, including one with us and this one. How has your life been in the last? I mean, your life changed over the last week. How's that been?
So the attention can be a very good thing, and it can also be a very, very bad thing. And I've been trying to do the best that I can to make sure that it is, good and not bad.
Right.
Now, the reason that it can be very good is because these issues have existed, and people have known about these issues existing in our campus for a long time.
Okay.
The school newspaper, a year before I even came to the school, wrote a piece over 4,000 words long called Studying While Black, which was all about profiling. The story was profiling different black students and their negative experiences reflective of racial bias with public safety officers, not only on Barnard's campus, but also on Columbia's campus. So this is well known. The administration will say, wow, we're just learning about this. This video really reveals a lot to us. It doesn't reveal anything to them because they've known. What it does reveal is the presence of this issue to a larger student population outside of the population affected, and also to outside media. Right. And that's important because that can help to catalyze change. So in that regard, the attention that is being received is good. Now, the way in which it can turn bad is if this attention over-focuses on me, right?
Okay.
So that it becomes, look at this exceptional incident that happened to this student, rather than saying, look at how what happened to this student reflects larger things that have been happening and will continue to happen at this school if we don't change things.
Right. And one of the things that we also discussed, and I want you to talk about here on the podcast, is about the culture at Columbia University when it does come to race. Because you said something, and we actually featured in the article as well, about the reason why you think there are some racial problems over at Columbia University, Barnard College, wherever, over in that area. Go ahead and talk about it. You said something that I didn't think of. Tell us about the culture when it comes to race at Columbia. Because one of the things that I said during the interview is that Columbia kind of touts itself as being this diverse, open place where people can come, and they tout diversity. And then we see incidents like this. There was another incident, which I'm going to let you talk about, that happened last year with a white student and some black students. And you can kind of also get into what you think the root of the problem is.
Okay, so first of all, when we talk about culture at Columbia, it's sometimes a difficult thing to do because although we aren't a very large school, we are large enough to have a diversity of cultures and a diversity of experiences of Columbia and Barnardness on campus. At the same time, though, what you're talking about happened last semester. It was basically there was a white Columbia University student named Julian Von Abel who started saying a lot of white supremacist things in front of these black students. And it was videotaped. And when
I saw it, yeah.
Right, and when people saw this video, one of the things that a lot of people said was nothing in the core curriculum, which is basically like the gen ed requirements for Columbia College, refutes the white supremacist statements that this student has made, which caused a lot of people to wonder. Our school may be advertised in a way that touts diversity, and we may even think of ourselves as a student body of being very diverse. And all that may be true to a certain extent. However, what you find in a lot of the classes, in particular the classes that we're all required to take at Columbia College, which granted is separate from Barnard College. I don't know as much about their curriculum.
Right.
But at Columbia College, these courses do not empower us with the tools to refute the type of white supremacist rhetoric that you heard being expressed by that student last semester.
And, that's I find it interesting because most people that I would ask about that, they might not say it's about the curriculum, and that's what you're saying is what you believe is the root of some of the issues that are going on at Columbia and possibly Barnard too. What support have you received? You were thrust in the spotlight because of this. Hundreds of thousands of people have seen the video. They know who you are. They know your name. Tell us about the support that you've received. Have any celebrities talked to you? Has anybody reached out to you? Any big names? I don't know. I'm just asking because, again, usually when this happens, you see this whirlwind of people that come out, the outpouring the support. Tell you, what support have you received?
So I have received a lot of support, not necessarily from celebrities,
okay.
although certainly from some people that I've never met before,
okay,
who for various reasons have somehow come across the story, right. And in addition to them, there are also a lot of people that I have met, some of whom I haven't talked to in a while, but faculty, students, even administrators, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say that I think when you look at the timing of who's reached out to me in terms of offering support, that also reveals something insidious about the nature of the Barnard administration. Because no Barnard administrator reached out to me for support or to apologize until Sunday night. Whereas on the other side of the street, Columbia on Friday not only said we're sorry about what happened and not only said we're going to support you, but also said you need to come meet with us today. We have other meetings scheduled. We'll push them aside for you.
Mm-hmm.
When I finally got the email from the president of Barnard on Sunday night, which offered support and offered to meet and offered an apology, they said, we'll give you half an hour to talk to us. Here are the times that you can come in. Do you see the big difference there?
Oh, wow. So they gave you a time and they only gave you a half hour to talk about this?
They gave me 3 different half-hour time slots that I could choose from. Whereas on Sunday
So basically
night,
what you're saying, it wasn't a priority for them. Would that be safe to say?
I think that it certainly was not as much of a priority for them as it was for the Columbia administration, which, again, on Friday, right? So long before Barnard reached out, not only did they reach out, they also said, we're going to reschedule our other things for you. Not, can you fit into any of these times?
Okay. And then my other question is, have you gotten any negative feedback? A lot of times when this happens to people, when they're put in the public eye because of something like this, sadly, things happen, people come out. Have you received any negative feedback? Have you felt any danger? Has that happened at all?
I wouldn't say that I've felt any danger. I've been trying to keep up with the things that people have been commenting online about the stories that have been made about this, or just on the video itself.
Right.
And there's been nothing crazy like death threats or nothing like that.
Okay, that's good to know.
But there have been a lot of people who have misunderstood the nature of what happened. And I've been trying to figure out why. And I think I've come to the conclusion that it's really for 2 reasons. Part of it is the way in which it's being communicated, which in part falls on me and in part falls on the people who are helping to tell my story, right? The other part, though, is that there's another group of people who it's not even about them being ambiguous about what happened because of the way in which it was communicated, but simply just have no fluency in the vocabulary of civil disobedience or race or black people and their relationship to law enforcement in the United States. And so it's very hard to have what is really an advanced level conversation about these issues with folks who haven't even taken the basic course.
Yeah. And we see that quite a bit, people making comments, not just on this, but on other issues that involve race, who have never had any type of dealings with what it's like to be a person of color, to have to deal with something like this, because this is something that happens on a regular basis to a lot of people, and a lot of times it's not on video. And, since this has happened and other things have happened, we keep seeing this over and over and over again. There was a student at another Ivy League school who was just sleeping, and they called the police on her. There was another black student at another school who, I think it was Vassar. I don't want to say this. Maybe not Vassar. I forgot the name of the school. But she was trying to get into her room, and she was on campus. And similar situation to you, the police came and tried to arrest her, and it was on video. And we keep seeing this happening over and over again. What are your next steps? It's been a week. What's the next step for you?
So the news has kind of gotten bored with the story at this point, which makes sense because it's already been a week.
Okay.
But what that means is that now you see a new wave of media coming in, right?
All right.
The next step in the media cycle, which I think is an important step, because I think we've gotten from the news all that we're going to get, right? Which is enough attention to make the university scared.
Right.
Which is why the Barnard administration, in my mind, sent out that statement they did on Sunday night. Because the only thing that changed, as I understand it, between Friday and Sunday was the amount of attention it got. Because as I said, the investigation really didn't do anything in that time.
Okay.
Now what you're having is people who are looking to do more in-depth pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who are not so much just talking about this is what happened on Thursday, but are talking about all the Thursdays that have happened before that Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Meaning
I got you.
all the other students and all the other incidences that there have been, which is good because I think that's ultimately what's important, right? And because the process of doing those types of articles is a little bit slower, stuff is slowly kind of coming out. But I have been participating to the best of my ability in helping these reporters with that process, right? You know, mainly through the form of interviews, sometimes sending them information that can help them out.
Okay. And what do you hope to come out, you know, when it's all said and done? Because the thing is, you are a graduating senior. You're going to be gone next year. What do you'll be, I don't know, you know, where you'll be. We'll talk about that in a minute. But what do you hope is the end game here? What do you want to come out of this?
So what I want is for there to be tangible, sustainable, and significant structural change, not only in the way in which public safety operates on campus,
all right,
but also in the way in which the administration itself operates. Because in the administration's response or lack of response, or that's not true, lack of a adequate response on Friday, they perpetuated the violence of Thursday. They also expanded the victimhood of what had happened on Thursday. Because on Thursday, the people who were scared were me and the other people in that building.
Okay.
By the time Friday comes around, all the Barnard students get this ambiguous notification from the university, and then many of them become, or from the college, and many of them start to become scared because they don't know what happened.
Okay. And you're actually a journalism major. You're graduating this year.
I'm an anthropology.
Anthropology,
major, but I'm
excuse me. That's right.
Yes.
So again, tell us a little about you. You're from California, right?
I'm from Los Angeles.
Okay. And you're an anthropology major. You want to do journalism. Tell us a little bit about some of your interests and what you dance too. I know that.
Yeah, I do dance. So it's interesting, this entire saga of what's been happening this past week, because I think what it's revealed to me is a lot of the challenges that I'm going to face in the work that I hope to pursue.
Okay.
Because what I ultimately would like to participate in doing is I want to help to use media to bring different communities together that don't often speak with each other and help them to have more mutual understanding. And that essentially is the problem that you see happening here with the reception of this story, right? Wherein certain people that generally fall along the racial lines of white people and people of color, although there are exceptions, are understanding the story in very different ways.
Right.
Because they've been socialized in ways that cause them to have different understandings of these things. And so the problem that I find myself having in trying to communicate what happened to me and why it is significant is how do I get white people and non-white people in the United States to understand an issue of race in the same way. And that type of skill and that type of critical reflection on where this communication starts to fail is something that is going to be continually exercised in a variety of different contexts in the work that I hope to pursue after I graduate. All right.
Well, listen, we really appreciate you coming in today, Alex, to talk to us about this. Such a very, very important issue, and thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes this week's podcast. You can pick up the latest edition of the New York Amsterdam News on newsstands now and get updates online at amsterdamnews.com. You can also keep up with us on Facebook at NYAmNews and follow us on Twitter at NYAmNews. This is Cyril Josh Barker. Thanks for listening.